Good afternoon and welcome to Phillips Mill Community Association's ArtTalk. I'm your host, Laura Womack. Jen McHugh is our executive producer.
Hello, all.
We're very excited at Phillips Mill. It's our first live show on site at the mill since the Youth Art Show early in 2019. We've sorely missed this historical building, but we're back. The show is installed, or almost so. There, you can hear them behind me. The artwork is up on the wall and the sculptures are being placed. I'm camped in a corner of the mill. I just couldn't stay away, and I'm very happy that we're back in our home. I'm also, can't tell you how happy I am to have David Rago join us today. He's the founder and owner of Rago Auction House in Lambertville, New Jersey. He and many members of his staff are original experts on the internationally renowned Antiques Roadshow, including his partner, Suzanne Perot. David has built his business from a stall at a flea market on Route 29 when he was 17 years old into a highly respected auction house. He's an expert in American and European 20th century pottery and porcelain and has written several books on the subject. Rago Auction House is the leading house for New Hope modernist furniture design, and they're now pioneers in the burgeoning trend toward online auctions. With the 92nd Phillips Mill Juried Art Show opening this coming Saturday, we wanted to talk with an expert who could help us think about how to put together an art collection, or at least how to buy individual works of art. And we're very pleased to welcome David Rago to give us the benefit of his considerable expertise. Thank you so much for being here, David.
Thank you for having me.
So those of you in the audience, thank you very much for joining us as well. Please join us with your questions, put them in the Q&A where we can find them easily, and we'll take them as we go along. All right, David, we've all heard it. They say, buy what you like, but we all want to buy wisely. We see the prices of artwork just seem pretty untethered from any objective valuation system. I see your face reacting to that. How do we decide where to put our art dollars?
Oh, I don't think people should be investing in art. I'm an outlier in that regard. I think that at least financially investing, if you're looking to invest financially in art, I think it's a mistake for a lot of reasons. Number one, will you enjoy the work less if you bought it and it loses value? I think that the investment in art is the enjoyment we get by having it. Number one, it's in your home every day, you get to look at it. Number two, what happened when you bought it? Did you go to the Phillips Mill Art Show and meet people and talk to the artist? Did you meet other collectors? Did you track other work by the same artist or artists over the years? There's a lot to be gained from it that's not financial. I think the financial end of things really obscures the benefits of buying and living with art. Now, that said, you don't want to be foolish, spend $10,000 on 1,000 painting because you won't enjoy it every time you walk by it. As one collector once said to me, it'll be like having a pebble in my shoe. Every time I take a step, I'm annoyed. So buy with your heart, keep an eye cocked to the future. The best advice I ever got in that regard.
So how do you, with the prices of art, it's very hard to understand what you should pay for a piece of art. There's not a lot of, published comparisons, or unless you're an expert and you go to one of your auction house experts. How do you figure out what is a reasonable price to buy something for?
Well, unless you're talking about a new artist that has no track record, there's more information available than I think at any time in the history of art. There's so much information online. Let's say something that we sell. You want to buy a piece of Rookwood pottery or George Nakashima coffee table. You can go online and see the prices for 500 Nakashima coffee tables, what they've actually sold for. Thousands of pieces of Rookwood pottery, not just what people are asking, but what people have actually paid. So there is a lot of information out there. If you're buying work by a new artist and it's at a show and you see comparable prices by other works by the same for other works by the same artist, that would be your guide. But secondary market prices are out there.
Yeah, there are a lot of online resources for that. But we all want to be the clever one who finds and discovers an artist. I have a good friend I'm a little jealous. She bought a Robert Beck in a cafe years and years and years ago. It's one of my favorite in her terrific collection. How do we trust ourselves in our eye?
How do you trust yourselves in your eye to do what?
Yeah, to buy something, take home a piece of artwork and, you put it on your wall. It says a lot about who you are, what your taste is. How do you know that you're buying something that is worthwhile, especially as they get more expensive?
Well, you're the only arbiter of that. If you like it, you enjoy it, and you put it on the wall and it makes you feel good, then that's really all you need to know, aside from if you didn't pay an egregiously high price for it. Just go with what you really enjoy. And there's certainly enough art around. I mean, you're having a show. How many works of art are in the show you have coming up?
So we have 95 framed pieces, 20 sculptures, and about 260 portfolio pieces.
There's a lot of material to look at, to really look at art, train your eye, and if you're looking to invest, buy things that are already established. But if you're looking to enjoy, then the sort of art fair, art exhibit that you're running is the perfect place, because you'll see work, I assume, by local artists primarily.
Yes, we only take artists within a 25-mile radius of the mill.
Then you're supporting local art. The price of the frame of reference for pricing should be there. You're likely to meet the artist and other people that buy work by that artist. And if you like it, that's really that should be the bellwether.
All right, so I'm getting your message about the dollar figure, but I do want to follow up. You said something scary the other day, that buying artwork is like buying a car, and that when you drive it off the lot or you take it home from a gallery, it loses a great deal of its value. Can you talk about why that is and why we shouldn't mind that?
Well, when I say loses value, there are economics at play here. Galleries run a business. They've got to pay for advertising, staffing, rent, sewage bill. All these expenses get rolled into the price of the gallery, and normal markups of the gallery. Artist wants $5,000 for a piece. The artist puts it out. The gallery puts it out at 11. They sell it for 10 or 9,500, and that $4,500 or $5,000 is the gallery's profit, plus it covers their expenses. But the artist sold a piece for $5,000, and so about half the value of what the things sell for new goes towards those expenses, and that's why I said it's like driving a car off the lot. And you took a major contemporary artist like Lino Tagliapietra, the leading glass blower on the planet. His new work might sell for $40,000, $80,000, $100,000 a piece. They're worth half that once you buy them, but because he's a seriously good artist, he's not making any more glass. The prices on the secondary market for his work have been creeping up over the past 5 to 10 years. So there is some increase, but it does not start out that way.
So you said buy in part to support local artists. Why is that my concern as an art buyer?
Well, if you live here, you live in an artist colony, and you live around artists and people involved in art. And if you don't support it, it won't be here. There's a great vibe to being in the Lambertville, New Hope area. And it's been that way for almost a century and a quarter. I personally like that about this area. It's something I brag about. There aren't that many artist colonies in the country, and we live in one. And as a friend of mine once said to me, if you don't support it, it won't be there. So I do believe that that's part of, again, that's that unquantifiable profit we make from buying a work of art, is that if you support this community, it remains, we're enriched by having that community here.
And it is an important local aspect of our economy here. That's the art community is a major sector of this area's economy. Jen, we've got a question. I want to welcome people's questions into the question and answer section, and we'll take them as we go along. What have we got, Jen?
Sure. We have a question from Phoebe. She wants to know, David, so instead of buying through the gallery, should you go to the artists themselves? I think this was in reference to purchasing the piece of art.
That's a very good question. And As long as an artist is represented by a gallery, I don't recommend going around the gallery to buy from the artist. You can sometimes do that. Many artists won't sell directly to you. They'll only sell through their gallery. But same thing as I said earlier about if you don't support the arts won't be here. If you don't support the gallerists, the galleries won't be there. And what does that mean? Well, where's the research and the promotion of the art done by that artist? Where's the market going to go if no galleries are supporting that artist's work? Not that finances are the primary concern, but it is a consideration. You want that gallery to make a profit on this artist. I bought a sculpture by a local artist, Mark Pettigrew, that I know Mark personally. I've known him for many years. I liked his sculpture. I could have bought one directly from him for 40% less than the gallery was charging, but I refuse to do that. I think the galleries need to be supported.
But if you're supporting the galleries are the ones, as you say, they're promoting the artists, and that's actually what is going to build their name and get them out there and maybe support that price that you paid to begin with. What do you think of that?
Totally exactly what I mean.
Yeah. All right. So David, I love to look at the Rago auction catalogs. I like to go and see the previews as, just another kind of art show. You have a good turnover there. So you can see a lot of artwork at the Rago auction house. And I look at some of the artists who's, were working 50, 60, 100 years ago. And it always makes me think, as I learn about their career, it makes me think about our local artists and what their future is down the line. I don't really have a question about that, but it just always makes me feel a little philosophical about buying art from artists now. And I wondered if you ever have any similar thoughts, or if you have any reaction to that.
Working with contemporary artists as a dealer is not something I do. I buy contemporary art. We've been buying paintings from Bob Beck for 25 years now, maybe more. And he's not the only local artist whose work we buy. We don't buy that many because we love his work and we believe in him. But I have really no way of predicting where anyone's market's going to go down the road. It's for me, it's not a financial investment. If I want to invest in a work of art, I'll buy a piece of pottery made 125 years ago, whose market I've known for almost half a century and whose work I've been tracking for that long. Yeah, if you're going to buy for investment, you really have to know the material and the history of the market and where you think that market's going to go in an ever-changing economy and ever-changing dashboard about what people are looking for.
Right. And I was asking you about this the other day. Robert Beck is a great example because he's got the show at the Michener Art Gallery, or the Michener Art Gallery now, the museum. And, we show a lot of his work here. He's been our honored artist. Our show is juried. We have 3 jurors who look at the work that's submitted in the framed category, and we have 2 jurors who look at the work in the sculpture category and the portfolio category. Is that sort of a way of helping you feel good about the decisions that you're making when you see that these have been vetted, these local artists have had a certain level of achievement?
Sure. I mean, it's always nice to hear someone else's opinion, especially if they know what they're looking at. But I keep going back to you. You've got to like it. And I've seen things that, I've been selling art for half a century. This is my 50th year. And I walk into a museum and look at what's supposed to be a great painting, and I just don't get it. But I had a mentor. He was Philip Johnson's partner for many years, and he had a painting in his house. This is David Whitney. They've both since passed, and there was a basketball hoop hanging from the canvas, like at an angle, like it was broken. I looked at it. I said, "I don't get it." He said, "Don't worry about it. Either you get it or you don't. It's okay." There's no wrong answer with these things. You're going to buy something because somebody else says it's great and you don't like it at all.
Right. Fair enough. People, I know we've got a lot of background noise going on here. We wanted to be at the mill. This is the first time the mill's been open, and we've got a crew working, putting the sculptures in. So I apologize for that. I'm trying to speak loudly and mute myself in between so that we can minimize that for you. But I appreciate that. We'll keep on that. We do have some questions. I'm going to mute myself, and Jen, if you can help us get through a couple of those questions.
Sure. Let's start with Jamie asked, are you still doing live auctions at Rago, or are they all virtual and online now?
With a couple of exceptions, we've only ever done live auctions, even during the black days of COVID, March of last year. There wasn't anybody in the room, but they were live online, on the telephone. People left absentee bids. The only online-only auctions we've done have been with the art aggregator Artsy. We've done a couple of sales with them that were online only, but we believe in the live auction format. Since June of last year, we were able to have people in the room. The crowds are not like they have been, I can assure you that. Our first auction in Lambertville, which was 25 years ago, we had over 2 days, 400 people come to the sale. Now, over 2 days, if we have 40 people come to a sale, that's a lot. But yes, we're live, and the previews are live. You can come in, and I do encourage people to come to the previews, not to interfere with the art show. Wait till the art exhibition is done, but come to our place when you don't have that conflict and walk around and look at what we have put up. Because for what we do, we're regional auction house. We have no illusions of grandeur, but for what we do, New Hope modernist furniture design, you'll see some of the best pieces ever made right in your backyard. So yes, we're live. A long way of saying that.
Well, I think it's a great, I mean, I also appreciate, David, that you're sending people to us, and we love to show you. It's a fantastic show. But as I said before, it's great to go to the auction. It's exciting to watch you and Suzanne do the auctioneering thing. That's really fun. I've bought a few things at the auction, and that's a lot of fun. And it's kind of a big adrenaline rush. But and I've seen some amazing things there, not just from our local artists. We've seen some great stuff there from them, but I remember, I think I mentioned to you this, David, I saw some chairs there that were arts and crafts. They had some tile, I think, on them. It's been a while, but they were a bit mysterious, and they ended up going through the roof. They were Tiffany, and I think you got $300,000 for those. So it's a fun place to watch art go for sale and to see the show.
Every once in a while, something takes off.
All right, Jen, what else do we have?
We have a question from Alice. She wants to know, if you go into a gallery and you see a price on a piece that you like, is that a firm price, or is it proper to negotiate a bit?
It depends on the gallery you're going into, but I really don't know of any gallery that lists a price on a piece and that is 100% of the time the price. There's almost always some negotiation. Usually it's a small percentage, 10 or 15%. My own experience, if you buy multiple things at the same time, you might get more than that standard discount. But yes, as long as you don't want to be too hard-edged about it. You don't want to keep going back for a lower and lower price and beating up the gallerist. It's probably not going to work, and you're not going to have a relationship. It's not fun. So the answer is yes, but with compassion. Gently.
I love that question, and I love the answer. I spent a number of years in Asia, and I still travel there when I can. And when I first moved there, I tried to learn how to bargain. It's a very intimidating thing to do. Eventually, I got reasonably good at it, and I learned that if you bargain too hard, you take the thing home and you're not happy because you feel bad about that person's face is there. So I have to agree with what you said there, David.
You're in an art gallery, not a souk.
Right, exactly. And in the souk, you should have some compassion. The door is open here. And it's motorcycle season. In a souk, I think you also have to have compassion because, they're selling artisans' work there too. Just a personal opinion. So I think all of the auctions are online now, David. I know that you do them live. I've seen you and Suzanne live at the auction. What has the internet done to art sales and the auction houses?
It's really leveled the playing field, because it used to be when we were holding our sales in New York City another lifetime ago, before cell phones, you might have one phone line, and that was a landline from a phone slugged in through the hotel dashboard, because we'd hold our sales in hotel ballrooms. You need absentee bids. Otherwise, it was based on who was in the room. And now we had a sale during COVID. No one was in the room because it was during the shutdown. We had a phone bidder bidding from Russia. The agent handling her bid, it was a woman. Our agent was also a woman. She was in Martha's Vineyard. She was plugged into the Chicago mainframe, which was then routed to our computer screen in Lambertville during a live sale. And the technology has really changed the auction game, and it's harder to sneak up on things on one hand, because more and more people know about it. On the other hand, it's a lot harder to miss things. It used to be if something come up at auction, you wouldn't know. Now you put in a little tag and you're notified, oh, there's a Nakashima coffee table coming up at Catone's next week in New York State. And so you're hearing about a lot more. It's internet has really changed the game for auctions.
I think you've brought in a whole new market as well. I mean, I've seen, again, at your auction house, a lot of work from Asia go for prices that I think that you weren't expecting at least a few years ago, as Asian buyers were getting into the market.
That's true of all auction houses being opened up to the Asian market now through the internet.
All right, Jen, we've got some questions coming in. What have we got?
We have a question from Phoebe. She wanted to know, David, how did you get interested in pottery?
It was pure karma. I was selling at the flea markets in Lambertville in the early 70s, and my parents, I was selling porcelain, because if you're middle class from the Trenton area, porcelain, Lenox porcelain was something you knew had value. But my parents started collecting Roseville pottery around 73, and when they showed me what they bought, it was a Roseville 40s peony pattern tea set. I mean, by today's standards, it's dreadful. But when I saw that, I fell in love with it. I mean, I saw my future in it. It was one of those very strange things. I became a pottery dealer that moment, and it hasn't changed since 73.
I think that story is a great story, obviously, but it also illustrates a lot about buying art. I mean, you think now that that piece that you fell in love with when you were 17 was awful. And I think that our taste changed the more we look at art. And I was told, just keep looking at things.
Yeah, I had no idea that ceramics would hold that kind of appeal. As I like to say, if I like used cars or paintings as much as pottery, I'd be retired by now. Pottery is not the most lucrative field to be in. It just happens to be what I really love and what I responded to.
It's been pretty hot, though, the last decade or so, though, hasn't it?
It's maintained its value. Now, there were several hundred makers before World War I making art pottery, and there are at least that many of contemporary potters of merit. So these markets are not all going in one direction, which is up. There's some things that, like Rookwood pottery, the more representational work, a vase with a flower painted on the side, the values have dropped. George Orr, the least representational, a sculptor, a modernist, abstract expressionist working 125 years ago, his work has only gone up. So that within those 200, 300, 400 markets, sub-markets of 20th century ceramics, things are moving in every which direction.
And I think that comes back to your point about just speculating in art being such a difficult call. And there's so-called brown furniture that is beautiful and fetched incredible prices. And now, it's even at auction, you're not seeing the prices that are there. I mean, it's a little bit shocking to see what what you can get things for nowadays. I mean, the trends, playing the trends, I think are so difficult.
But when I got in the market, people wanted early American folk art and Victorian, or Duncan Fife, or Regency. I mean, they were looking for traditional furniture and arts and crafts furniture, which became the hot thing in the 70s. You set up at a show with a piece of arts and crafts furniture, and people would look at you like you had three heads, like you did some of the antique shows or antique fairs. And that became super hot through the 70s and 80s, and started to wane around 2000, between 2000 and 2010. But modern furniture, people kept moving forward in terms of what they wanted. Art Deco became hot, and then mid-century modern. Well, now we're selling furniture that was made 10 years ago, 5 years ago. We're selling, for good numbers, pieces by Mira Nakashima in addition to George. So people have constantly moved forward in terms of the furniture they're looking at. You have to sit on something, and you need a dining table, but Victorian dining tables with big clawed feet, nobody wants it. They're looking for modern. And my question is, what's next? Because we are now up to now with furniture. Does that mean we go back to Chippendale and Duncan Fife, or I have no idea what the next step is?
I was going to ask you, David, because I'd like to know too.
Oh, I once saw a cartoon with a guy sitting across from a fortune teller, with the bandana and the earrings, and there's a crystal ball in front of her, and the punchline is, if I could pick the ponies, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. Right. So I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I probably wouldn't tell anybody. I'd just be buying it up.
There you go.
No one really knows where it's going to go.
Right. No, and I think, I mean, you make a great point that we've seen an incredible through the roof with mid-century modern, and now we're up to now. Where do we go from there? And I think that reinforces your point from the beginning that you have to buy what you like, because it's very difficult to say. We do have some more questions coming in. I love them. They're great questions, so keep those coming. We are talking about building an art collection and buying art. So I know that there's some interest in Phillips Mill history, and I love that. We'll put that to a little bit later. We do have some of that on the website. We've got a book that you can get at our show here. When we open on Saturday, we've got a history of the mill, so I really appreciate that. But Jen, we've got some technical questions about buying art. Let's get David to weigh in on those for us.
Sure. We have a question from Bruce. He says, I bought a painting I like, and it has a signature, but I can't really read the signature. Where can I get assistance in deciphering the signature?
It's a good question. Fine art is not my strong suit, but I would figure out, is it a modern painting? Is it a 19th century painting? Is it an old master type? I would figure out which kind of painting it is first, and then I would try to talk to an expert who specialized in that particular era of painting to see if they had an idea who the artist was.
David, do you still have your evaluation Mondays? I think you were doing once a month. People could bring things in, and I brought in some jewelry to get some input on, and it's great to talk to your experts. Are you still doing that?
Because of COVID, we don't do that any longer, but you can always mail in photographs for a free opinion.
All right, great. Thank you. What's up next, Jen?
Yes, this is kind of along the same lines. Can you discuss the importance of obtaining documentation when you purchase a work of art, whether at a gallery, auction, or directly from the artist, and maintaining an inventory of your collection?
I think Antiques Roadshow is responsible for creating what I believe is mostly a misconception about provenance. If it's not any good, the provenance doesn't matter. If it's great, the provenance can matter. It certainly does at times. And as I like to say about provenance, it doesn't hurt. It usually doesn't help all that much. But especially if you're buying something important or something that could be important one day, you're buying a major piece of glass by, I mentioned Lino Tagliapietra earlier. Sure, you're spending $50,000, $100,000 on a piece of new glass by a major artist. get the invoice, make sure you keep a copy of it. Maybe get a letter from the artist talking about the work of art, something from the gallerist who sold it to you, what they have to say about it. I would definitely assemble that. But by and large, I think that the important thing is, you have a really good work of art. Can you prove it's by the person you're saying it's by? And beyond that, paperwork doesn't play into things all that much.
Jen, let's keep going through these. And then Jen has put together some slides from the Rago auction house, David, focusing a lot on pottery. So we'll get some reaction from you on those. But let's get these questions through.
Yes, we have another question from Lisa. Art forgery seems to be on the rise. What steps can a buyer take to avoid buying a fake?
Well, there are a lot of fakes out there. There's no question. You have to buy from somebody you trust, somebody who's reputable. It's critical. We'll use the example of George Orr pottery. George Orr was a master, and he's the most difficult potter to imitate because he was so good. But in spite of that, I've seen maybe 7 or 8 different types of fakes of George Orr's work, ranging from ridiculous to really quite good. And I've been fooled by them every once in a while. That's how good some of these fakes are. You have to be able to trust the person you're buying from, not only in terms of their honesty, but how much they know about the type of art you're buying. I would always get an invoice from that person saying on the invoice what the work is, that they're guaranteeing it's right, and just keep your eyes open down the road. If you, like in the case of George Orr, a piece walked in Antiques Roadshow. We're in Corpus Christi, Texas, and it was a piece of George Orr, and I appraised it on camera. And I used the piece to show what you look for to tell that a piece is real, because it had all the earmarks of a real piece of George Orr. A half a year later, some pieces walked into the gallery in Lambertville. And when I looked at them, I knew that 3/4 were fake immediately, and I realized that the rest, they were all fake. There were some very good ones. And the qualities of those pieces reminded me of the piece I appraised in Corpus Christi, Texas. So I asked for photos from Roadshow. I appraised a fake. And not only did I appraise a fake, and this is what I do. This is the thing that I'm best at is ceramics. I used the fake as an example of how to tell a piece was real, because this was supposedly a real piece in my head. But because I kept my eyes open and kept looking and learned about the fakes that were coming out, mostly on eBay, by the way, I learned the hand of the artist that was making these pieces. So again, it's a long answer to your question, but work with people that are honorable, that are willing to be wrong and willing to learn from their mistakes, and will tell you when they've made a mistake in selling you something, and get documentation. You want to be able to back it up in that case, not for provenance, but to prove that you bought it as a real piece.
So that must be pretty devastating, David, to have looked back and realized that you made a mistake. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that as a professional auctioneer?
It's humanizing, not devastating. We all make mistakes. For me, as a friend of mine once said, like I started the auction company from scratch. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And it took a long time to even get any kind of a handle on it. And my best friend said, if you want to know what not to do at auction, talk to Dave, because he's made every mistake there is. I'm okay with it. I'm confident enough with what I do right. I learn a lot from the mistakes that I make. And if anybody expects me to be perfect before they'll do business with us, you shouldn't do business with us, because we're going to fail you in that regard every once in a while. But we'll own up to it, and we'll all learn from it.
So what happens then for the buyer who bought the piece, thought it was original, had it authenticated by an expert? What happens in that case?
When we sell it, we always take it back. We sold an Edgar Payne painting, a California plein air artist, for $40,000. 6 years later, it was consigned back to us, and we found that it was a fake. It was a $40,000 mistake that we had to eat. We gave him his money back. I mean, it's just not worth it for us to not take it back. So we don't say in our catalogs that beyond 60 days or whatever, once we pay the consignor, we're not taking it back. That's what we say in the catalog. But in reality, we've never refused. We haven't made that many mistakes, but we've never refused taking something back when we were wrong about it.
And it's an area where your reputation is everything, I think.
Yeah, you really have to.
Yeah. All right, Jen, what's up next?
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm trying to decide which one. Here's one from Mary and Patrick Fowles. Could you comment on the intrinsic and/or financial value of an original Mercer tile versus a more recent Mercer tile from the same mold?
Well, I mean, to me, intrinsic value means it's either gold or silver or diamonds or something. So it's clay. And what I sell, the ceramics I sell, don't have intrinsic value. Mercer tiles, there was a broad gap between what period Mercer tiles were selling for and what the new ones sold for. But the heyday of that market was probably a good 20 years ago. And so the prices for period Mercer tiles have dropped precipitously and are more in line with what contemporary ones sell for. That said, if there was a contemporary tile that I liked that was $100 and I could buy a period one for $200 of the same design, I'd buy the period one. If it was $1,000, I'd have to think about it.
All right, and let's see, what does Jean have to ask, Jen?
Jean wants to know, is there a consistency with the values of shaker items and furniture? Can you speak on these items?
Well, what I know of the prices for shaker furniture is consistently inexpensive these days. I mean, shaker was part of the old school of furniture collecting back in the 70s and maybe the 80s. Great furniture, important, spiritualized, basic, deeply influential. You look at people like Gustav Stickley and the arts and crafts designers, and shaker was certainly something that lent to the American arts and crafts movement. And I'm sure to more than that in modern furniture design, but it's not something that for the most part people are looking for these days. It's probably a good time to buy it if you really love it. Prices are probably 80% less than they were at the peak of that market, but the quality isn't less, just the pricing.
Exactly. All right, keep those questions coming. I love the help. What does Richard want to know, Jen?
Richard says, and this is a compliment for you, David, I have purchased many Bucks Impressionist paintings from Rago, and the specialists you have to help bidders are superb, especially Mick. What training do you provide for your staff?
Well, by and large, when we hire someone to run a department like that, they come with a lot of knowledge. Usually what happens is the training we give them is not in their field in terms of knowledge of the art history, but rather how to apply that knowledge to the auction business. Because auctions are an odd duck. I mean, it's a lot of dealers have thought they could become auctioneers because auctions look very sexy. The material's out there, people bid on it. It's transparent, it's fast. I mean, if you were doing antique shows and you brought 100 pieces to an antique show and you sold 10, you probably had a good antique show. If we did an auction of 100 pieces and didn't sell 75, something was wrong that day. So auctions are very sexy, but actually running one is very complicated and very difficult. And so the art specialists that we've taken in know art extremely well. Our job has been to train them how to apply their knowledge of art to the auction business.
So I love hearing you talk about, sort of an unusual day at the auction house. I'm always interested in the estimates that you put on those, on the works that you have up for sale. You were telling us before, David, about how there was a piece that didn't meet minimum at a second auction, and then, went through the roof on a third one. How common is that? How solid are those estimates?
Well, I'll answer both questions separately. Auctions, again, are funny. I mean, you put a piece up at auction and let's say it's in at $10,000 to $15,000 and the minimum bid is $8,000 and no one bids on it, it doesn't sell. I'll put it up at the next sale at 6 to 9 with a $5,000 reserve or minimum, and it brings 20,000. I mean, someone was on vacation. Someone got their bonus check. They weren't paying attention, didn't know there was an auction. The designer decided there's a place in the house for it. There's 100 reasons why people do or don't bid on things at auction. So it's always quite surprising how often we sell a piece for more the second time than we didn't get the first time. What was the second part of that question?
And then how solid are those estimates that you and your experts put on the works?
Well, if you're going to show the picture of the Tiffany lamp that we just sold, you can see how little we know about the estimating process. There you go.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about this. So this was a piece we sold in May in Lambertville. It came out of nowhere, came out of a house in Virginia. We estimated it for $50,000 to $75,000, and we got it because a Washington auction house told them 25 to 50. So because our estimate was higher, they gave it to us. And then we found out that it's the one that was exhibited at the Paris Exposition in 1900 and came back in 1901 and was exhibited in Buffalo at the Buffalo Expo in New York in 1901. And then it disappeared for 120 years. So we put it up at 50 to 75. And by the time we were about to auction it, we knew we were low. We were hoping it would bring a couple $300,000, and the dream was that it would bring $400,000, which with the 25% premium the buyer pays, it's $500,000. Okay, that was our goal for this lamp. Well, long story short, it hammered at 3.1. It sold for 3.75 all in, which is a record for any Tiffany lamp. The estimate was a joke. We knew it was conservative. So much for being an expert. By and large, estimates are the hidden secret of the auction game. You want to have an estimate that's high enough so that people know that you know what you have and you're serious about value, but not so high that people are turned off and don't want to bid. Retail estimates are the kiss of death at auction. On the other hand, an estimate that's too low suggests there's something wrong with the piece. And so people, not in this case, obviously, but people will give it wide berth.
All right, good. So let's, we got a question from Terry.
Yes, Terry wants to know what determines if something is sold with or without a reserve.
Well, for us, if it's worth more than $1,000, it's going to have a reserve. But we don't sell that much that's under $1,000, and we do sell some things under $1,000 that do have minimums or reserves. But my thoughts are, if we're going to take a piece from you for $1,000 that's worth under $1,000, we're not going to make any money on it, and I don't want to have it not sell. So by and large, those are offered with no reserves, which usually means the minimum bid is about half the low estimate. It's in at $1,000 to $2,000, and minimum bid is $500. But without reserves, no one's giving you anything good. I know I had one collector once complained, "Oh, everything's reserved in your auctions." Well, who'd give you anything if you weren't protecting them? The question isn't whether or not something is reserved. Is the reserve fair? If you've got a Nakashima coffee table and it's in at 15 to 20 with a $12,000 reserve, that's probably going to be really fair. But if the table's in at 30 to 40 with a $30 reserve and it's a normal Nakashima coffee table, it's not fair. It's not going to sell. It's not really how you hold an auction. You might get one person bidding once against that reserve, but there won't be any back and forth. So you really have to find the sweet spot between not giving something away and not overpricing it.
All right, Jen, I think we've got another question. Then let's get back to the pottery after that.
Okay. We have a question from Jean. Do a lot of museums purchase works of art from auction houses, or only when a well-known artist's work is being shown and for sale?
So another good question. Thank you. We've seen a spike in museum purchases since COVID. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe more people are donating money to museums. I'm not sure, but they've definitely been more active. Traditionally, that's not been the case. When a museum wants to buy something from an artist or a gallery, they usually are given a lot of time to think about it and to pay for it, because museums are usually, such decisions are made by museums by committee. Auction, our sale next week is Thursday and Friday. And you've got to make the decision by that time, and we pay our consigners 30, 40 days after the sale. And so we need to get paid in that time frame. So it's not been conducive in the past for museum buying. Lately, maybe they have a larger war chest. Maybe we work out terms with the museum, because we do love working with museums. And we have seen a spike in museum purchases in the last year and a half.
How has the pandemic affected the art market? I think some local shows have done well if they've been able to open. Artists have told me that they've had a rough year. Other artists are doing okay. What's your vantage point, David?
It's been so strong, and astonishingly so. When we closed in March of 2020, we had to shut down for several months, and we thought we were done. And to our astonishment, people were bidding they were bidding with abandon, and it continued. And we realized that, well, there's no cruises or vacations or hotel rooms, or for a while even restaurants people could go to. And consequently, they were stuck at home and had all this extra money, and they wanted to upgrade their living experience. We definitely saw the bump in auctions first before the galleries. It took a while for the galleries, a couple, 3 months, to get up to speed virtually, because gallery sales had to be virtual. But any gallery that upped their game to make a virtual presence available to their client base, they were definitely seeing an uptick in business. I've heard very few complaints. If you're selling art right now and you're not doing well with it, you're probably in the wrong business.
Okay, fair enough. Jen, let's take a look at some of those slides you put together for us from the Rago auction house. Let's see what David has to share with us.
What would you like to know?
Yeah. Let's tell us about this piece, and yeah, you share with us. We want to learn about pottery today from you.
So that's a piece of American arts and crafts pottery made in Boston by the Groovy Pottery Company. That pot was made probably about 1900, 1902, influenced by French ceramics of the period, hand-thrown, hand-sculpted, decorated with this rich vegetal green matte glaze. Groovy was the pinnacle of arts and crafts ceramic in America, and this one was a masterpiece, 30 inches tall, very rare. There's not a major museum in America that has 20th century art that doesn't have an example by Groovy in it.
It's a lovely piece. So this sort of thing, a lot of people like to buy wall art, framed art, because it's, you can always squeeze another one in. Something like this, it's delicate, it needs its own display. What about buying this sort of thing as a collector, David?
Well, china cabinet, bookcase, they're safe. Pot like this, 30 inches tall, this is pretty heavy pot. I mean, you could put this on the floor in a corner and be hard pressed to knock this one over. They should be out, especially these rich organic vegetal ones. Or you have to have things to fill out a home. I see decorative ceramics as you have a basic black dress, you need a nice silver or gold pin to go with it. So you can have all the paintings you want, but to me, the house wouldn't be complete with the right furniture, the right lighting, and the right decorative accessories.
All right. What else do we have, Jen?
That's by the same company, made about the same time. A multicolored piece, umbrella stand, that's a floor vase also. But a rich vegetal matte brown glaze with white lilies. Beautiful piece.
Elegant, yeah, very lovely. All right, next one, Jen.
We're showing all Groovy. And these are pretty, if you were to see 500 pieces of Groovy pottery, which would take you much of a lifetime, you probably wouldn't see many that were better than the 3 we just looked at. Most of what they made was one color, matte green. They tended to be small, 7, 8 inches or shorter. If they had decoration, they were just leaves and just one color. We've just seen 3 multicolored vases, all of size, with rare background colors. These are really quite special.
Jan asked about the values on these. How much did these go for, David? And were they in line with your expectations?
They were not in line. It's funny, a small piece of Groovy was at a Sotheby's sale about a year ago. Single color, squat, closed bowl form with leaves and buds, all one color, a butterscotch color, a very nice pot. It had been purchased from Phillips, a Bonham's auction for $5,000. The person who bought it couldn't sell it. He was a dealer and gave it to Sotheby's. And it brought $450,000 and apparently set a record for how long it took to sell a piece at Sotheby's auctions. All three pieces you just saw were infinitely better than that one. The first one, the tall green one, didn't sell at all. The second one, the two-color brown and white one, sold for like $35,000. And the light blue one with the white flowers brought $25,000. So auctions are a strange animal. As the person that bought those last two pieces, the friend of mine in Boston, oddly enough, he got them at bargain prices. That's what happens sometimes.
Congratulations to him. And it helps to know what you're doing there. All right, we have a question from Jean. Jen, what does she want to know?
She wants to know that she says, I have read that women artists were not allowed to throw pots, but were the major decorators of the images on the pottery works. Why was that, and when did it change?
Well, what you're asking is somewhat true. For example, at Groovy and at Newcomb, which were important potteries from the period. We just saw some Groovy, and Newcomb was at Tulane. So Newcomb College was for women to learn applied arts. The men threw the pots, but there were artists like Adelaide Robineau, Susan Frackleton, Mary Chase Perry, who definitely threw pots during the period. That said, women tended to be the decorators of pieces rather than the ones who constructed them. And I don't know of any women who were working for large factories who were in charge of the kilns. That would have been a small studio operation, again, like Mary Chase Perry or Adelaide Robineau in Syracuse. So yes, there was a division of labor, but one of the people look at a piece of pottery and they see, oh, it's a beautiful vase, or it's not. But these things are symbols of a place and time. And what I find really fascinating and compelling about them is they're symbols of a place of time where America was emerging as an economic and artistic force on the world stage, and where women were leaving the parlors and becoming part of the workforce and becoming recognized as artists and designers. It doesn't sound like much to have a woman in New Orleans in 1905 decorating a pot, but 2 generations later, that woman's granddaughter is working in a factory during World War II as Rosie the Riveter. It had its place in helping America economically, aesthetically, and socially come into the 21st century.
The women often were not considered, to be important as fine artists, or weren't even allowed to be in fine artists in some movements, like the Bauhaus. A lot of the women who were involved with that were, they weren't considered part of the fine arts movement. They were encouraged to go into a craft like textiles.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an area of increasing interest. Is that right, David?
It would seem, but to me, Bauhaus was really more, architecture and craft. I don't see Bauhaus so much as a fine art movement, although architecture, I guess, is fine art, but ceramics, textile design, photography.
All right. Okay, Jen, do we have some more things to look at?
Yes, we do. We actually have.
We like our pictures here, David. We like to look at things. There we go.
It's a work by Alice Stoddard.
I wouldn't know what to say. I'm not a fine arts guy. It looks good. I'd buy it. Did we sell it? Put it on the wall.
You did sell it.
Yeah.
And it sold for actually kind of in the middle of where you projected. So it was a little bit of a deal, I guess.
We are director. She would have been the one to price that piece. Not speak intelligently.
All right, that's fine. So, David, we talk about the trends in art, and we're very fond here at Phillips Mill of the New Hope School, obviously the Pennsylvania Impressionists. We talked about fashions in art. Some of our founding artists here at Phillips Mill, they they seem to have held their value. Is that, would you feel comfortable talking about that? Some of them have come up at auction recently and they're doing quite well. They're in great collections. What do you
About Solder and Redfield, Lathrop,
oh,
artists like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's been, look, that market shot up. It went from nothing to astronomical pricing, settled back down, but is slowly rising again. This is really some of the best impressionist work done in America, especially considering if you lived here in a stone house in New Hope or Solebury or Hunterdon, and you had a chance to buy paintings done by an artist a century ago of your home or a home down the street or a place that you drive by to get milk, it resonates for you, and it looks good in your home. So I think that this work is of the highest caliber and has a place here in our artist colony of an area. And I understand why it's maintained its importance to local collectors. I don't see that changing much. If prices shoot up too high, they'll come down again, and if prices go too low, then there'll be a flurry of activity to buy them.
Where do you think we're at right now for that market? We see those come up at auction. We see them for sale. Is this a good time to buy those? Are they, fairly priced, or are they a little too high?
I'm just making an intelligent guess here because it's not my educated guess. It's not my specialty field, but I would say that prices are probably 65 to 75% of peak, except for maybe the very, very, very best, the one out of 1,000 that is probably all the money or more than it's ever brought before. But there's a number of people you could talk to who could answer that more intelligently than me.
Sounds good. You were recently at the opening of the new museum of the American Arts and Crafts movement. I think that's exciting. Tell us about that museum. Tell us what it looks like. Tell us about your involvement with the.
It's a big, beautiful space. The Rudy Ciccarello paid for the architecture, bought the collection. It's the single most collection of early 20th century American decorative art of that period anywhere. And it's comprehensive. Great ceramics, furniture, lighting, but also photography, great photography by some of the early 20th century masters like Stieglitz and O'Keeffe. It's a major installation, beautifully displayed. If you're in St. Petersburg, you really got to go there. I mean, if you'll walk through that museum, you will see the best of what was made in America and some European work between, say, 1895 and about 1920.
That sounds good. But David, we're going to talk about putting together an art collection. We've ranged a lot of different places. I have to ask you to reassure me personally. I was told to buy what you like. I did that. I have a bunch of stuff. I don't have any loyalty to a particular period or style or movement. It's just a mishmash. Yeah, they say if you like it, it'll all go together. I don't know. Do we have to think about these, how decorating our house? Are we allowed to match our sofa, or should we just go for the best art? Where do we go with that?
I've got to sift my way through that question, but just because you like it doesn't mean it's all going to go together. I would go back to the same center of all this. Do you enjoy it? Do you feel good when you have it around you? If you not paid too much for it and worried about having your money in it, you should just have fun with it and not worry if it goes together or not.
All right, good. I'm not too worried about it. We enjoy it. So there you go. Say some nice words about buying at a local art show like the Phillips Mill, where you're supporting the artists, the local economy, and an 18th century historic stone mill.
What could I add to that? You just said it all. But go to the opening, go to the exhibitions, talk to people, watch what people look at, what the artists have to say about it, and see how you feel when you repeatedly visit. Don't go once, go multiple times. You'll miss things. How long is the exhibition open?
We open on the 25th, this coming Saturday, and we're open for 5 weeks until October 31st.
I'd go back at least once or twice after the initial viewing, especially if you're there for the opening and it's packed and you can't see everything, but that's fine. I like to listen to the crowds at openings. They're very instructive. And then go back on a Wednesday at noon when you're the only one there, and just keep trying it and see what talks to you as you walk through it. But if you're of the sort that understands it's a privilege to be living here in this community, and with how much the artists contribute to that community by working here and creating new art based on what happens around here, whether it's could be the flood, it could be the new strip mall opening up that someone's chosen to paint. But if you like the idea that what's happening here is important, then support it. Find something you like within your budget, and buy it and take it home and live with it for a while. I lost you. Uh-oh.
There we go. I've been muting myself. Thank you so much for that. That was eloquently put, David. And I agree. When those of us who put the show together, we can't take in the whole show, even by the end of it. So it's great advice. And thank you, David, of Rago Auctions in Lambertville. Thank you very much for generously sharing your time and your expertise. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for asking me, and thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you all for joining us on Art Talk. We're back next Sunday on September 26th. It's opening weekend, as we said, at the 92nd Phillips Mill Juried Art Show. We're putting together an overview of the works on view and the award winners. I'll be talking with Chair of the on-site show, Dr. Mary Flamer, about how we put the show together. Art Talk will be a pre-recorded segments available on our YouTube site, and you can find the link at phillipsmill.org. And the following week, we'll be live again with some of our award winners. Again, check the website for more information. Thank you, David. Thank you to Jen McHugh, our executive producer, Dennis Riley, Jean Mahitch, our content producers. I'm your host, Laura Womack, for Phillips Mill Community Association. Good evening.
Good night.
Good night.